try to center around this Owl offense around him. Not to mention they also have a good running game with B.J. Emmons. They're not asking him for, to average 100 yards per game. He only got 73 against Southern Miss. But, this is the scary thing about them, is that in their last 5 games, they have outscored their opponents, the Owls, 187 to 77. Now, and another thing is, too, about this Owl, they have a good defense. They only give up 23 points per game. So UAB is going to be challenged with that running game, while the Owls are going to try and continue to use that up-tempo offense going forward.
All right, Jake, what's interesting is I actually went to FAU, so it's my alma mater, and me and Scott will have the privilege to cover that game on Saturday. I love trading. I love hearing from guys who love the numbers, so I'll throw a number at you. UAB's 18.5 points allowed per game is 15th in the nation. It's actually slightly better than Auburn, but however, there's context behind numbers. College Football Reference has a metric called strength of schedule, which gauges, obviously, your entire schedule in the context of every college football team. Do you know their schedule out of 130 teams was ranked 130th? So what that leads me to believe is, they've gone up against a lot of very weak programs. And that's not to take anything away from them. They're here for a reason. They've won their conference fair and square. They've played the games. But FAU, like you said, has a very good defense. We lead the nation in takeaways, 17 interceptions. Miko Dotson, our cornerback, who me and Scott have had a chance to interview on multiple occasions, very nice kid, carries himself professionally. And as Kiffin has said, he's an inch away from playing at Auburn. That's because, he's not that tall, but he gets the balls very quickly. Reminds me a lot of a young Brent Grimes, if we're talking about NFL guys. Dotson leads the nation in interceptions on an individual level, 8 picks. And it's so funny that you mentioned Harrison Bryant. I was joking to somebody on Saturday when we were covering the FAU Southern Miss game, Brett Favre's alma mater. I was like, don't you think Robert Kraft's going to call this guy in a couple of months? Because I think they need a tight end over there in New England.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If they're looking for a tight end to really replace, I would definitely go outside the box and look at this Bryant kid. I watched him just manhandle those safeties of Southern Mississippi. They were a good team. They came in as 7-4. They had to finish the season, unfortunately, 7-5. But they actually had a pretty solid defense. And I am so glad to hear that you talk about the strength of schedule, because UAB has only been a football team for the last couple of years. So they don't have that pedigree yet. Florida Atlantic has played teams like Ohio State already. And, like I said, they played Southern Miss on the NFL Network. They got at least something building with Kiffin, which is why it's kind of shocking to me that he's having these conversations with these 2 Division I programs with Ole Miss and Arkansas on that point. But then when you watch the film of FAU, you can see these guys are Division I ready talent.
Mm-hmm.
They play for the FBS, which is understandable. They play in the Conference USA. I get that. But these guys, they could jump to another school if they wanted to. They could do it right now if they wanted to. If they got done with this game and they were looking to transfer, they can do it, because there's so much speed on this defense. They got a good NFL up-tempo offense running with Lane Kiffin, and they got a good quarterback in the making. I love his back shoulder throws, especially inside the red zone. I thought that was really innovative as well. And then UAB, it just feels like that feel-good story, because I actually watched that Boca Raton game last year. And the one thing that really impressed me about Bill Clark is just what he's able to create with the lack of talent that he is able to recruit. Like I said, there's only a couple of good players. There's only 4 good players I could look at and said, yeah, you could be ready for the NFL. And I just feel like UAB, they just really are more of a ground and pound team, while FAU is all about, the air show and the running game.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention the fact D'Angelo Antoine, one of their wide receivers, he's a hybrid. So he's only had 8 carries as a running back this year, but a lot that he's done in those 8 carries, 146 yards. He's got a rushing touchdown. We haven't even scratched the surface to note that Tyler Johnson, their quarterback at UAB, is playing injured. He has hardly played the last couple of weeks. I believe he's got an ankle injury. They're going to probably have to go with Dylan Hopkins, their backup, who, like you said, they're a ground and pound team. He's a very mobile quarterback.
He's a mobile quarterback, but he hasn't really had that challenge. Keep in mind that this is only the 7th time that FAU and UAB are meeting up in this title game for Conference USA. So they're not going to get a good idea of what Dylan Hopkins can do because he only has 3 touchdowns on the year, doesn't have much starting experience. So if UAB has to go with that, then FAU, they're just going to stack the box, and they're going to go after that running game and shut it down. Because if Johnston can't go or can't go at least 4 quarters, it could be a problem for UAB.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the only thing I'll say about this matchup is, number one, a few years ago it wouldn't have happened. And the reason why I say that is UAB discontinued their football program, and because everybody wanted it back, Bill Clark stayed on anyways, and he deserves that's one of the more unbelievable feel-good stories that UAB's even playing in this game since they didn't have football for a period of time after they discontinued the program. So I actually saw FAU beat UAB badly one time at Lockhart Stadium, but obviously that was one of the few wins that FAU had against UAB. And, of course, Lewis's first game came against Middle Tennessee State, ironically the first game I saw with FAU. But, yeah, there's some interesting dynamic storylines here for sure. So, 2-9-3 teams. Do I think it's a toss-up? Probably. I'm going to just be the homer and go with FAU, but, who knows? It'll be an interesting game, and I'll be curious to see where these guys end up bowling in a little while. And the one thing we can't lose sight of, and I don't like 9 million bowl games at all, Jake, but what I will say is this. The one thing the bowl games serve as a purpose, okay, is that they are another opportunity for these players to get another football game and impress scouts, is what they are.
That's exactly why you see teams that are not named Ohio State, Wisconsin, Alabama, Auburn. I mean, they are teams, like Indiana, for example. They have to go have somebody. FAU has to go do this. This is the kind of time, and I know that everybody wants to talk about the title games, they're not such a big deal. For these kids, it's a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you watch the film, these kids have something. They want to play in the NFL. They want to get that opportunity. And if it takes for them to be on, number 53 of the 53-man roster, they will do it. This is exactly the kind of thing that we don't get enough of in college football. We understand about the amateurism. We get that. But these kids don't have that fortune. And so they have to play their way. They have to get their way up that roster and try and make something happen. A good example is Aaron Rodgers. He played for California. Mm-hmm. California was only known for one thing, a quarterback school, because Jeff Tedford was running things there. So he had to work his way in at Butte Junior College before he went there. Right. This is a great opportunity and a great moment to watch some Conference USA football between FAU and UAB.
All right, any closing thoughts that you want to mention, Jake? We're running out of time. Wish we had a little bit more time, but I want to save a lot of what you're going to do for next week anyhow. Just so you know, folks, Jake Rongholt and I will be doing a solo broadcast next week, and we'll be talking about a lot of different things. So hope you're ready to do a solo shot with me, Jake. We're going to definitely lay it out there for you.
I will be ready, Scott.
And another thing I should point out, too, about Jake Rongholt, and we talked about it earlier, Jake Rongholt will be moving around the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network, appearing on different shows. I want to find out that there's more to Jake than sports, so he'll have an opportunity to exhibit everything he's doing. I think you've earned the trust of us to be able to get more versatile. So, one of the shows you'll be coming on will be our baseball show, and another one that I expect you to come on will be the Real and the Rare.
So much happening in baseball right now. Mike Moustakas is now a Cincinnati Red. There was trades with the Brewers and the Mariners today. There's a little Garrett Cole speculation. The Mets just got Jake Marisnick. And then Zach Wheeler is a Philly. So I love this time of the year. I mean, the hot stove last year, honestly, this is just a preview. But the hot stove was kind of cool last year. This year it feels different. Cole Hamels is down Atlanta Brave. Right. Michael Pineda just signed 2 years, $20 million with the Twins. There's so much going on in Major League Baseball right now. No wonder the NBA ratings are down.
Wow, that's okay. Well, you know what? Now that you mentioned that, we'll leave it on that note. You just earned yourself a ticket on one of our upcoming baseball shows, and they'll actually start being on a regular basis on second. Lewis has one final point before we close the broadcast. Go
I'll
ahead.
say this: Aaron Rodgers can have his discount double check and Jake from State Farm, but I think over here at the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network, we like our Jake from Full Sail. So
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love it, Lewis. I love it.
All right, with that said, that concludes our this edition of the Sports Exchange. Just to thank the guests that were on tonight, we'll lead off with Ryan Skolrud. Damon Knight did a good job. David Levin, as always, and we love Mark Littell, Mel Farr, Tom Shanahan, and last but not least, Jake Ronhold. So, meanwhile, everybody, you have yourself a great weekend, and we'll go ahead and do it again next week. So meanwhile, have a good night, and you know what? We'll be talking to you, Jake. Our next broadcast will be in Racine, Wisconsin. Good night, everybody.
keep blasting that Metallica, Jake.
You know it. Good night.
Night.